What's up, everyone? It's Leo and Josh with another episode of 713 Football, man. Thank you for tuning in. Whenever you do, if it's today, tomorrow, man, we've had a big week, a great week, for the Texans. And probably one of the more exciting weeks, I think, in the offseason. Well, I can't say that because we did have a season where we got Danielle Hunter, and that was really good. But, man, whatever. It's been a great week, man, in terms of addressing our needs and, really something I thought the team should have done for a while now. Just leaning into this new identity, man, being a physical run-first offense, man. Josh, let's get right into it, man. How do you feel about the two new signings of Braden Smith and Wyatt Teller?
Yeah, man. That's crazy. Yeah, I forgot that you were out last week, so you didn't even get to really talk your shit. We talked about it on Robert Land's podcast if people want to check that out. But me and Jeremy cut it up last week, so you didn't even get to unload the clip completely for everybody on Braden Smith. But yeah, we got Braden Smith coming in the building. We got Wyatt Teller, and we sneakily got Evan Brown as well. And I'm excited about all three because they all kind of come in and have experience in those run-first offenses. And I think all of them thrive in run-first offenses. All bring that mentality of physicality in the run-first offense. I know you all going to get tired of me saying run-first offense, but screw it, man. I'm ready to rock and roll and ready to kind of take everything off of CJ's shoulders and really just push it and elevate the defense offensively. And I'm really excited to kind of see how everything moves forward and how it frees up the draft moving forward too.
Yeah, so let's just start off with this. I mean, CJ Stroud from his rookie year, really obviously that was the best football he's played in the NFL. Lots of stacked boxes, right? Really led the league in air yards per attempt, really pushed the ball down the field, right? I think leaning into this run run heavy scheme, and just having an offensive line that can threaten, that makes you feel like you have to stack the box, man. 100%, will put CJ in better situations to do what he's good at, which is let the ball rip, pushing it down the field. The more single high he sees, the better. The more stacked boxes he sees, the better. The less he has to process and, take the check down. I think that's kind of what he does best, and I mean, there's been a lot of quarterbacks like that, and there's been a lot of Super Bowl winning a few at least in the recently, from like Russell Wilson. Ryan Tannehill didn't win a ring, but we saw the Titans play really good football with him up until a certain point. It got to the AFC title game with him. It was competitive, So this still works. I mean, even what we just saw from the Seahawks, Josh, what do you think about this specifically? Like, do you think this kind of like leaning into the run game and kind of how do you think it's going to elevate CJ Stroud to being the quarterback that we all thought he was going to be after his rookie season?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think the biggest thing that people kind of forget about because we've shifted around schemes and then we brought in all these fancy weapons in year 2 and then we switched it up year 3 to kind of change it up even more again and kind of build things with a different OC and say, oh, we're going to do more game plan this and game plan that. But I think the thing that's been dropped and kind of forgotten about and needs to be kind of reintroduced to the conversation is that he is at his best when he's attacking in between the numbers. And whether it's attacking too high or attacking single high, I think that matters, but it doesn't matter as much. I think the more important thing is we have to get back to a point, whether it's a situation like year 1 where there was just a question about our personnel in the passing game, which is why teams doubled down in the run game so much, and we were able to manufacture a run game. Bobby Sloak was with freaking Devin Singletary, which is still one of the more underrated things in franchise history, to be honest, like to be able to run the ball with him and who we had on the offensive line. But whether it's looking at that or however you want to look at it, I think the important thing is that him between the numbers is how he's going to get back to where he's at and his highest level. And without the run game, without the ability to influence the hook defender, which is the corner, the linebacker, pulling the safety down and creating different looks for Nico, or if Tank Dell can come back this year, or with the two young fellas at receiver, none of that really even matters if the offensive line isn't playing at a level of cohesion and doesn't have a similar identity that can attack in the way. Like the last year or so, we've been able to get bailed out. Really, the last 2 years because we didn't see Mixon with it, and we saw when the line shifted a little bit. But previous year with Mixon, he was able to bail us out a little bit and kind of put lipstick on the pig and make it look like we had a better run game as a unit than it really was. And in reality, he was so great at certain times that it was able to cover up. But if we really want to take that next step and get out from being just this like fun, scrappy defensive team that everyone loves to talk about how great they are, but they can never really win anything substantial, then this is what we have to do. And maybe we step back on how we kind of give this effusive praise and say CJ's going to lead us there and blah blah blah, this that, and the other. But in reality, if we continuously grow and win, he will get that reputation. It will build his confidence, and there'll be kind of a self-feeding cycle that I think is the only way moving forward. Because if you don't do it, then CJ is not going to get that extension because it's going to continuously tumble down and continuously crater his development, and you're going to end up having to draft either a quarterback, probably not this coming year, but who knows, in 27 or 28, and you have to start this all over again, and you waste this window you have with this defense. So that's a lot to say to answer that question, but in reality, it's the step that had to get done no matter what, and it's still not done because there's a couple more pieces we'll talk about when we get to team needs, but it's the first step and the mandatory step that we've started. I'm really proud of Caserio to have that vision and learn from the mistakes of previous years and the growth of previous years.
Yeah, so you add Montgomery, and then you add Brandon Smith at right tackle and Wyatt Teller at guard. We don't know, I guess, which guard specifically. We don't know what the
probably
iteration
left
of the
guard
line.
because I don't think Evan Ingram's ever played.
That's what we all assume, but
right, for sure.
You never know how. Yeah. But regardless, I mean, we add physicality everywhere. I think both of those guys profile as better run blockers than Titus Howard for sure. One thing that I think we should talk about, because it kind of has been a little bit kind of glossed over, because who is Evan Brown anyway, right? But he's a guy that can play center. Josh, what do you think that he can bring that we didn't have at center, in this last year,
Yeah, I'll just run through real quick because there hasn't been a lot like given on his background and everything. I can kind of give you all a rundown real quick. He's a guy who's versatile center. He started at both guard positions over 7 years. And then he began with the Giants out of SMU, undrafted, so he's a Texas guy, right? Had some really good numbers in college. He's bounced around between the Dolphins, Browns, Lions, Seahawks, Cardinals, like a lot of teams that have running in their identity throughout the years. He first became a reliable starter in 2021. He's featured in 74 games and started 57 through 2024. And then his NFL career, you kind of look through and you just kind of get that continuous growth point. You go all the way back to the beginning. He was drafted by the Giants, then bounced around to 2 different practice squads with the Dolphins and Browns, and then he finally got his chance to be a starter playing at both center and right guard with the Lions 2020 to 2022. So that was Matt Patricia years, but they were still a heavy run team that he was playing next to Frank Ragnow, going in, subbing in for Frank Ragnow. So he's got that kind of mentality to the center, which is a huge thing. Then moving forward to Seattle, he started 16 games at center there because he beat out the rookie from Michigan. Then moving on to Arizona, he started 17 games at left guard there. So he's got extensive experience there from 2024, 2025. So we know for sure that in that Petsick scheme and that Gannon scheme that you've got a guy that kind of knows how to build everything off of the physicality and the even playing at guard, which I don't even think we're going to really need him or ask him to do. Like if you can have a guy who started that many games at guard and move him to center, I know it's something that you've really hoped and wished about, but it's really cool. Even when you go back to college, like looking at his college stats and stuff, he was started both center and guard there. He was a 2016 All-Texas college team. And I'm just really excited, like kind of looking through. He's just one of those players that was under the radar. As soon as he got cut, it just flashed red lights to me. Like, this is a Nick Caserio type of guy because you got position versatility. He's played at above average level at different spots on the offensive line. And he's a guy that I know that I'm curious what your thoughts are, because this thing that you've talked about over and over again. You said, go get me a guy that's either play guard or tackle that also can move into center. And now you finally get that guy there. So you have raised that floor from a Jake Andrews. You have a guy that's more physical, has that experience and everything we talk about. So I'm really fascinated to see kind of how you think he might fit into all this.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, off top, he's a bigger player, right? I don't know exactly what Andrews is listed at, but Evan Brown is listed at 6'3" and 320, which I feel like, in this duo scheme, where we're not asking our guys to necessarily move laterally and do all this. We're asking them to double and work up to the second level and not give any ground at least, I really love the fit, because like I said, this is probably going to be the first Texans line in a long time. I really can't remember the last time I've been able to look at our line and be like, wow, we actually look bigger than the other team. You know what I mean? So with him at center 320, you got Wyatt Teller, who is 6'4", 6'5", somewhere around the same weight, 320, 330, somewhere in there. Evan Ingram around the same size, and then right tackle, both our tackles will be enormous pretty much no matter whoever plays. We don't have any small tackles on our team. So man, I think when it comes to the identity of like leaning on to leaning on the other team, leaning on another team's defense and working the double teams and stuff, man, I really do love this pickup. I know that it's not sexy. It's not like we went on and got Tyler Linderbaum, but from a philosophical standpoint of this team that we want to be, it goes deeper than, scoring like 30 points a game or scoring a touchdown every possession. It starts off by just, giving your defense a chance to rest and proving that it could be the last defense standing, if you will, because, those body blows accrue over a game. And I think another thing that I find interesting, and I know this might be a little bit niche and a little bit of like, I guess, factors that people don't talk about, man, is 28 points in a football game. First of all, that is a lot of points. But second of all, man, some of the top scoring offenses in games have, spells in a game where they don't score every possession. But that doesn't mean that each possession is null and waste and void, right? If you're able to go out there, you get a first down, or like, you deliver a blow that, the defense feels for the rest of the game and they have to think about and worry about, in a drive that might end in a 3-and-out, that might end in a punt, right? I think that those things all accrue, can really end up in scoring a lot of points. And I think the team, to me, that if you don't understand what I'm talking about, a couple teams come to mind. I think about the Ravens. When the Ravens are humming, I mean, Josh, you could say this. I think we talked about this off the record a lot. There's times where, I mean, Lamar and them, they're not getting – it seems like they're not going to get anything done and nothing is going on, And then right before halftime, they score a touchdown. And then in the second half, they score three or four touchdowns, and then it just turns into a wildfire type of situation. I think that with this defense, if they're like, all you have to do is just give them time, off of the field, and then at the same time, as you're wearing their defense down, those 2 to 3 yard runs end up becoming 5, 6, 7, 20. And then, when you catch the defense leaning, next thing you know, you have a couple play action bombs, and I think, if you're able to run the football with a solid, decent play caller, man, I mean, once the defense has to defend the run, especially for the whole game, and then, not even just talking about the physicality of stopping the run over and over and over again, but the fact that they have to also worry about big Nico Collins, averaging 15 yards a catch, really in somewhat of a down year where he's adjusting to a scheme, and it seemed like for the first 6-7 weeks, Kaylee didn't know what the hell to do with Nico Collins. And then on the other side of Nico Collins, you have Jaden Higgins, another guy that is 6'4", 220 pounds, can run, around a 4.4, has like almost a 40-inch vertical. Jalen Noel, who I know people are down on, and honestly, I just think that people should shut the hell up and just watch, because I think I think he's going to have a great year. I think that he will really have a really good year. In this new scheme, in this new identity of this team moving forward. Um, so we have three explosive receivers. I've seen people saying we need to go out and get another one. Listen, I mean, if you think we need another explosive receiver, I don't think that's a whole nother situation. We have guys that can definitely take the top off. We have guys that I feel comfortable about. And I know I'm kind of going off on the tangent, Josh, but I think when I think about our receiving core, and I think about us in a run heavy offense, especially even if we running out of 11 personnel sets, man, you literally could put anyone anywhere, and the shot can come from all over the field. From all three weapons. So to me, it kind of reminds me similar to how in CJ's rookie year where we had Noah Brown, right? Noah Brown averaged 20 yards a catch. Well, guess what? We have guys that are way infinitely more explosive than Noah Brown now. You know what I mean? So I just think, man, I love what we have done. Obviously there's needs, and obviously if there's a lineman there that raises the floor, that has like and I don't even want to say raise the floor, but has like a really unlimited ceiling at 28, you pick them. But I'm really comfortable with our weapons. You know what I mean? I'm really comfortable. We could talk a little bit about. We'll get into it. But yeah, man. So I know I kind of went off, but I guess it's been a while. I haven't been on a week, man. I've been sick, so I'm really excited about the shape that the team has taken, man. Josh, man, let's get right into it too, man. Wyatt Teller, were you? I know, kind of off the record, at least you have been talking about this for shit, I guess, since the season ended. You know what I mean? What do you think that he brings to this team? And man, there's been a lot of talk that he's washed, man. What do you think about it?
Yeah, for me, it's 100% just the health thing. Like, if
Mhm.
they're comfortable with the health things, and I think it's the reason he didn't get signed earlier is because there was a little apprehension around the league. Because you look at his like bona fides, I think the thing and it ties into Evan Brown as well, but I think the most important thing, or one of the most underrated things that I haven't heard mentioned enough, is the shift and difference that playing Titus at left guard had on Ursery at left tackle. I think having that veteran next to him and able to kind of guide things, and now you have a veteran at center with Evan Brown. You've got a veteran Evan at with Ingram. I keep wanting to call him Evan Ingram, um, Ed Ingram,
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
Ed,
Mhm.
Big Ed over at right guard, and then Braden Smith at right tackle. You've just got a bunch of dudes that been there, that love to hit people in the mouth. That physicality is their middle name and possibly their last name. There may be some name changes, who knows? But I think what you get with Wyatt Teller is a guy that he's had, even though it's a long time ago, he's had experience with two different positions. He started off at left guard with Buffalo before he got traded to Cleveland. But in Cleveland, man, like people, because it's been a couple of years, they've kind of forgot about. He was a Pro Bowler for 3 straight years from 21 to 23. And that was back when they had Nick Chubb at his very top. And everything ever since Nick Chubb left, they've kind of been in an identity crisis. And I think that's what led to Stefanski leaving, partially, is that they moved away from the run game. They didn't continuously invest. They finally got someone back this year with Judkins, but it was like too little too late. They didn't replace it quick enough to find that missing piece. And I think him trying to all of a sudden say, you know what, our guards are so good that it doesn't really matter how we run our offense. Like, we can just kind of have Batonio over here because he's a dog, and we got Teller over here, and our tackles are kind of a complete shit show for the most part. And centers kind of hit or miss a little bit. So, like, based on all that, like, we can just kind of drop back and we can throw it here because Stefanski's a genius and all this bullshit. I think in reality, it hurt him more than any player on the offense. With him shifting to more quick passing game and kind of leaning into that. And I think now that they're reinvesting, he's going to a place that's making that shift back to the run game and back to that physicality as a dynamic moving forward. I think he can have that revitalization in his career, and you can see it extend 3 more years, even 4, because I think as long as those injury things aren't a huge thing, something that keeps cropping up, because you can't really predict injuries. You can just hope, and you can build up the depth. And I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe went another veteran guy, or went drafted multiple positions, multiple players in the interior. But I think because of that, you have a situation now moving forward where he can be a true difference maker, the one thing that he's been throughout his career, and he hasn't really been in opportunity to do that because he was earned second team All Pro honors in 2020 and 2021, and I already mentioned those 3 Pro Bowl seasons. I mean, I think you really have an opportunity for the perfect kind of player to plug him in next to Ursary, elevate Ursary, allow Ursary to really be that true dynamic difference maker with his athleticism. He's no longer having to worry what's happening in the right of him in the run game with Titus. Like Titus was pretty damn good in the pass game, but having that dynamic now is going to allow you to kind of switch up and change. And I think a little under the radar kind of inside business with Teller as well, which is probably a reason why D'Amico likes him as well, is that he started off as a defensive lineman at Virginia Tech. So he's when he switched over, he brought that physicality, that energy, that high power. So maybe him and Cade Stover, you could see some interesting kind of conversations with them. I hope some of the media members ask him about that if he's gonna do any. They're gonna have the interesting, play calls or different offset looks that maybe using his athleticism. But you pair that all together, and I think you can move my last point, final point with him, and I mentioned this offline, I think hasn't been mentioned either, is that moving him right guard to left guard might be the perfect time because your physicality, you get beat up playing a certain way, leading with a certain shoulder, leaning with a certain way, knees bent in a certain way, all these different things. You can kind of reinvigorate your body by moving over to the left side, drop it, using a different foot to kick, kind of sliding, using your hands a little different way, leading with different shoulder, not having the same kind of grind in your body. And it may be a little bit of a reinvigoration now that he has all that knowledge he gained and all that physicality, and he's in a better place scheme-wise, and you pair that all with a chance to really kind of be that dude again and reestablish as the leader in a situation where they can finally be in a winning opportunity because he just hasn't been there since Baker left Cleveland.
Yeah, and I mean, here's another thing. I mean, not playing in the AFC North, not playing outside in the cold all the time. Something I never even really realized. But yeah, 100%. I mean, I think Wyatt Teller brings, physicality. I know that's a word that we're gonna say a lot. We've been saying it a lot. Shit, I guess we've actually, if you're sub to this podcast, you've heard physicality probably more than any other Texans podcast. Probably in the history of podcasts.
It's not just us. Nick Casario specifically said that shit like 20 times, and so did D'Amico in like some interviews. So
I mean, it's a physical game. I mean, and you have to, especially, man, if you're not gonna have a quarterback that can, throw the ball 45 or more times whenever you need to win the game, you're gonna have to have guys like Wyatt Teller, like what we hope Ursary can end up becoming, like Ed Ingram. You have to have a big group of guys that really go out there and take it upon themselves to move the football, And another line too that comes to mind is like the Colts line, like with Braden Smith, kind of a similar situation to what Wyatt Teller is coming from, right? When the Colts were at their best, between Andrew Luck and all the myriad of quarterbacks that they had to play with because of his early retirement or whatever, I mean, they were a team that they got a 1,000-yard rusher with Marlon Mack. They come back with Jonathan Taylor. They take a step forward, and they're always this team that you really don't. That you don't. You don't really want to play at the end of the season, because they can run the football well. So I mean, that pair with this defense, I think that we can take a step that some of those Cleveland and Colts teams haven't. You know what I mean, with this defense, but especially I'm expecting them to be as good or better. And honestly, let's just move right into this because I think it ties right in. Team needs leading into the draft. I think that, I think me and you expected Casario to get a couple starters for sure in free agency in places of need, like safety, right? I don't know how people didn't think safety was a need, but that's, sorry. Not bashing you if you were one of those people, but I mean, we had Kayvon Wallace or whatever the hell his name is. Sorry. Starting. I mean, that just is not ideal. In a Super Bowl type defense, you want to have You want to look at, up and down that depth chart and be like, damn, man, they're stacked. And I think with the addition of Reed Blankenship, man, I think that, obviously you don't want to turn down an all world talent, but it's hard to see us drafting a starter in the first couple rounds almost, in the DB room, Um, obviously, like linebacker can use some work. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think with these acquisitions that we've had, from Reed Blankenship to the 3 linemen that we signed, obviously you want to get a guy that is a complete game changer in the run game, of course, but there's no, we're picking at 28. We don't know who will be there that can even start on this football team, man. So, Josh, let's just talk about it, man, straight up. Where is the need? Do you see needs on this team right now?
Oh, absolutely. It's D-line today, tomorrow, and on next week as well. Like, you got to hit the D-line. You have to have an awareness that there's a clock on Aziz as a player. He's a great player, but like undersized linebackers just don't historically last super long into the 30s. So I think you have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky, years of like high level Aziz. Henry To'oTo'o is still a player. I know D'Amico loves him, and he's a great locker room guy, and he's really like good. Just seems like a good dude and all, but like he's a guy that you can constantly look to upgrade. So I think linebacker's massive. So DT linebacker, I still think edge because you didn't like Dominic Robinson is a fun player, but you could easily draft a guy at 28 or 38 and have him in as your third rusher, and then eventually have him replace Hunter in a few years. Because there's a reason they're giving Hunter 1-year extensions after another. Like he's a damn good player. He's a special player, but like it's hard playing defensive end at that level, and he's played so many snaps on his body and he's played so many full seasons that it's a grind, man. So I think that's a position. D-line in general, edge wouldn't be crazy with how good this class is, and safety wise, I think you're pretty set now at this point. But the one thing I'd give you in terms of secondary and safety and kind of thing to look out for, if they don't think that they're gonna be able to pay and keep Kamari Lassiter, which I think would be crazy. Like I think D'Amico loves him, but if they feel like there's some questions about whether they'll be able to keep him, or if they feel like Stingley is gonna continuously get these injuries here and there because he's such a big physical freak that sometimes people are that big, fast, and strong as a corner and move directions that they just physically it's hard to just stay 100% healthy all the time. Like drafting another corner, like if the player is that level of good, maybe a situation where you can continuously kind of cycle through and find ways. Like there's still a dime position available if they ever want to, if they get an absolute dude there that falls to them, like a safe. They say like Thieneman at safety, or Thieneman, who's a freak, is there at 28. Maybe they look at that, but I think that's like down the list. But defensively, offensively, I think it's the same. Like if somehow Sadiq is there, a tight end, I think they need to get a tight end in this class because Moreau is not a long-term piece. Schultz is not a long-term piece. They're like 2-3 years, in their NFL careers, most likely physically, with how much they get injured, both of them. You're not looking at Brevin Jordan for anything future. I think receiver, you're probably good unless there's so much value in the middle of the draft. Maybe one just kind of slaps you in the face, but I think you could go get another running back. That's a long-term piece because Montgomery's probably got 2-3 more years. Like you could get a guy that kind of complements both Woody and him and kind of gives you a little something. It's not a great running back class. But for me, it's like offensively, and then offensive line, obviously, like you could totally go tackle first round, and it wouldn't be crazy. You could go guard in the second round. You could go guard in the first round if the value is good enough for you. If Proctor's there,
none of the guys that we signed changed the long term plans of this team. They just changed the fact that what we have to do in the first round, which that should have never been the case anyway. You know what I mean? I think that, offensive line in the first round is still very much in play. It always has been. If you followed us on Twitter, if you followed us on, in any podcast you've seen us talking, we've always talked about offensive line since Casario's first round draft pick. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, but the thing is that is Blake Miller really can you say that Blake Miller is gonna for sure be the best player on the board at 28? Do you think that he's a guy can? I mean, and I like. I'm not saying Blake Miller is a bad pick. I'm just saying like from the idea, would you rather take, you know, would you force? Are you willing to force an offensive line pick because you're not comfortable with where the offensive line, will be next year or where it is now? Because you could draft a player. Here's the thing: you can draft a player because you think you have a need there, and then once you see him play on the field, you realize like, oh damn, we still have a need. And I think that's exactly where you do not want to be. Especially with the team in a Super Bowl window, you want to use those picks on guys that can come in and make game-changing plays. Which I think, like you brought up Adam, I suck at saying his last name. Adam, the safety from Oregon. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah, Thieneman,
Yeah.
Dynaman.
Yeah. Anyway, well, y'all know who I'm talking about. Game-changing safety. I would love to have him on the team. It's one of those things where like you almost hope that he isn't even on the board, so you don't have to make that type of tough decision almost,
Yeah,
because
pushes
like,
someone else down the board too, right?
yeah, because it's like, man, like if he's there, I mean, damn, you're looking at Reed Blankenship, and it's like, well, it just sucks, it's a tough situation to be in. Off the top of my head, I don't know Blankenship's guaranteed money due, over the next few years. But I mean, it's hard for me to see, obviously, man, if the player is a great player, it always ends up making sense, right? But it's hard for me to see us taking a DB early. It's hard for me to see us taking a receiver in the first round because like for you to justify that, I mean, you're gonna have to take one of these guys off the field, and you almost have to start saying like, okay, well, which one of these guys is gonna run block well? Like, if we want to run 11 personnel, like, is this receiver good enough to have us kind of sacrifice other people's roles, kind of, you know what I mean? It's so, but like I said, great players make great players, you make exceptions for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really like the receiver, Tyson, man. Is he going to be there? No, I don't think so. Is Cooper worth the first round pick for us? I don't think so. But I agree, man. Let's talk a little bit about tight ends because Oscar Delp had a great pro day today, man. You brought up Sadiq. I was actually talking with a good friend of the show, Bab, earlier today, man. We were talking about what is the most valuable type of tight end. And, honestly, man, I think it's the guy that can play inline because nowadays you see all these guys that can, well, I know it's such a tricky question, right? Because, I'm thinking about the explosiveness that a guy like Sadiq can bring. But, man, they have so many weapons that you can move in that kind of tight end-esque type role when we're talking about guys like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and then, Kenyon Sadiq, right? Harold Fannin type guys. I mean, the list goes on, right, Josh? I mean, Oscar Delp, though, I think he is a guy. I like to hear what you think about him. I think, like, if we could find a guy that can really, really play in line really well and also bring some explosiveness from that position, man, I think it can really, really extend Dalton Schultz's career. Well, I don't want to say his career, but like, it can keep him productive, I'll say, for whatever time he has left, right? Josh, man, what do you think about the tight ends? Like, what do you think about Oscar Delp's fit versus a guy like a Sadiq?
It's a historic tight end draft, and people are gonna kind of step back and like, what the hell are you talking about? We just got a draft with Tyler Warren and Loveland going off in like the top 15 together. But in terms of the depth, there's never been this many tight ends selected for the invited by the combine to the combine, right? So it's kind of it's a really special class in that way, and I think what you can do, what it specializes in, whether you're going, I mean, obviously Sadiq's there, you draft him, but I don't think he gets all the way down there. Maybe you move up if you really like the player, but I think he's kind of he's someone that you grab just because he's absolutely that much of a freak, right? You can use him in that Vernon Davis kind of role a little bit where he can block at times, but he's better as like just a move, absolute upside piece that Kaylee could really take advantage of in kind of a hybrid role, kind of going back to his time in New England. But I think when you look at Delp as a guy, I think you made a great point about getting a guy that can truly play that wide position. A guy I really love as well is the kid from Stanford, Sam Roush, who massive kid, like 6'6", 260, and just ran like crazy numbers and for that size, and had good jumps and everything, and looked really smooth catching the ball at the Senior Bowl across the board. But when you're looking both at him and Delp as guys that on tape they flash as blockers, but there's more and more upside, obviously for different reasons. For Delp, they just didn't kind of use him in that role because he was so damn good in the other one, and they had so many other toys to work, and they were working with a quarterback that's going to be a very successful dude, but he's not going to be in the NFL and Gunnar Stockton last year. So, and you're going to see the same thing happen with Zachariah Branch, right? He's another guy at receiver that's going to do way better in the pros than in college, because they just weren't able to take advantage of it no matter how talented he was. But when you're looking at Delp, when you're looking at Roush, who's a guy, that just had jack shit around him. So it was just what he did was really impressive, but it just wasn't a lot of it. When you get those guys in the wide position, you can really allow the simplistic execution-based offense that Kaylee wants to run. You can get those matchups. You can lean to the run game more. And guess what? It all ties into, like, we now would have a legit receiving threat out of the wide position. You would get to move Dalton Schultz around. Like you said, I don't think it's a stretch what you mentioned that you could get a longer career out of him, because you're going to be able to use him as that big slot type, that weapon that can be a reliable safety blanket for CJ, and just move it forward, and it just creates that middle of that field and opens it up where you have guys that can truly separate. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential we'll probably do another show where we talk about tight ends, and we just go down the line, and there's just so many dudes on the list that I won't even name the other ones, but there's a few guys, and I think it's really, really exciting to look at tight end and specifically even receiver. If you want to go get a big guy and you like Higgins, which they clearly do, but they haven't showed you they love Noel yet. We love Noel. There's a lot of people who love Noel, but if they view him more as a returner, there is a spot as a third receiver available on this team, depending because what they think about Hutchinson. If they can get a true upgrade in the middle rounds, it's there with that second round pick. It's there with that third pick with a guy that they think they can raise the floor with from that pick. But that's a whole nother conversation that might ruffle some feathers. But I'm excited with the skill position options at tight end and receiver. And
it's just so frustrating. My bad. It's just so frustrating to think that they might not like Noel, because I don't know, man. I just can't. We just didn't see that much of him. I'll say this though, if maybe like if there's an idea that he can't play slot in such a run heavy scheme where you're asking him to be like an insert blocker.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, it's like you drafted two. Well, Nico is Nico, so I don't want to see Nico doing that. But then you go and draft Higgins, who I think also, if you're looking at him as an insert blocker, he's kind of a high strung guy. Like he's a guy so it's like you drafted two guys that you didn't view as that really didn't profile as that type of a player anyway, which would make little sense to me. But things happen. I'll say this though: the idea of Sadiq being used in that role is very, very intriguing. And obviously there's other guys also. There's other guys that you brought up. I think having Sadiq and using him as basically like your third receiver in 11 personnel kind of gives you a lot of an infinite amount of options, and because he puts the defense consistently in the wrong, because you can't really, I think, him as an inline blocker is hit or miss, like you're saying. He just doesn't profile as that type of a guy. But I think that if you have him, running, in space to be a blocker, with motion, I think he could do that okay. And that type of speed that he has is kind of like, I mean, just imagine him, running like a crosser from in between the tackle and guard, like a deep crosser from that angle where you can't press them. You have to run through a little bit of traffic. I think if you're running the football well anyway, I mean, just imagine that. Imagine a team feeling like they might have to go in base. I mean, here's another thing: a guy with that type of explosiveness, like Sadiq, man. Shit, I mean, you might feel comfortable running maybe even 3 tight ends at points. I mean, and still using him like that in motion, right? So I think that it's really intriguing. Will he be there? I think that there's a lot of offensive linemen in this draft. I think that there's a lot of it seems like the odds are probably he won't be there. But I mean, but I'll say this, that's the case for Sadiq. The case against Sadiq is that he kind of makes Schultz a little bit redundant for all the reasons that I just named. The thing about Schultz is, in my opinion, like he's not a great inline guy, in terms of blocking. We saw that, I think, CJ's second year, especially. Well, I mean, he's just never been that guy. He's never been that great at that, right? He's also, I don't think he has that kind of explosiveness to really be a mismatch type of guy. He's a guy that runs solid routes. He gets open, he finds soft spots in zone, and he keeps the chains moving, right? I just kind of think that his skill set at this point, man, it kind of lends itself to more of a spread type offense anyway, in my opinion. So that's my dilemma. I'd like to hear what you think about that. Drafting another slot type of weapon in the Sadiq and all the other slot type weapons that there are. How do you feel like that really, affects Schultz and CJ and this run type, this run based offense?
Yeah, it's interesting and it's fascinating because the funny thing is Noel, like getting back to him in terms of that slot weapon, it's not like he's a guy who hasn't shown the willingness to do it. Like in college, he was willing to come down and hit you in your face as a blocker and be that feisty kind of cat. That's why there was some kind of slight comparisons to Amon-Ra a little bit with the explosiveness and the body build and everything. They just kind of haven't asked him to be like that. But I think it's an interesting kind of catch-22 that you're talking about here, because I think it would take a very special vision to bring in another guy that is at this point, day one, the vision is a receiving option. I think what you would have to do and what would have to happen is he would have to have something in his scouting report where you see a positional blocker type, like a guy similar to Brock Bowers, where now obviously not as the receiver Brock Bowers, but in terms of the blocker that Brock Bowers is, where you can use him as that weapon, that you can project it. Maybe he didn't, you can find the kind of loophole that he didn't really do it a ton in college because he was used more as a primary weapon, but there's some athleticism there, there's some suddenness, some explosiveness, some willingness, and the physicality. Kind of the opposite of what we're looking at with Oscar Delp, where he did all that dirty work stuff, and now you're projecting the receiving stuff a little more onto him. It's kind of the opposite side of that. So is there a guy that's willing, that has the right mentality? That's why I think you can probably find that guy with this draft. You could go get that guy in the 4th round, or maybe you trade back in the 3rd and you're able to take him there or something. You can really target that kind of player, and I think it would work for you. The other issue is how much better is that player going to be than a Xavier Hutchinson who you have already? Like how much better, it's kind of an interesting kind of dance. Like, so how good, like, is it a Michael Trigg, a guy who's an absolute freak with great hands, all the things you say? Do you feel like in a conversation you have with them that you can get to that, you can unlock that potential where he can be a weapon as a receiver like he was in college, but there's also some kind of nastiness to his game that you can do. Like, he would have to be that kind of special player, similar like Aaron Hernandez without the other shit, right? Obviously, but like, you want to be a killer, but not a killer, right? Anyway, that's not funny. I shouldn't joke about that. But but you have to get that kind of mix, and I think that the cool part is, though, like, of all the positions you have and how your staff is built, Nick Caserio was there when they drafted Gronk and Hernandez. You got a tight ends coach as your OC. You just brought in James Ferentz, who's got a lot of institutional knowledge coming from his dad, and then playing in New England and kind of moving around, playing offensive line. So he can kind of project a lot of that, I think, with some of these movement guys, and he can kind of see a little bit of that here and there. So I think it's really fascinating. But yeah, I think we love going to these
Yeah,
kind of like deep
yeah.
dives on these like middle
It's
round things. Yeah.
it's an interesting thing because like the thing is like I get it. You never want to pass up on a weapon on a guy that can be explosive from that standpoint because really like those guys are really rare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
it's but like the thing about it, you know, and I know this is gonna sound crazy to some people, is a guy like AJ Barner. Is that guy equally as valuable in some ways? It will never show up on the stat sheet. But when you think about like if you don't have AJ Barner with the Seahawks, this is real football like nerd talk, y'all. So like, follow
Buckle up.
along, you know, so like listen, if you have a guy like AJ Barner, who is the tight end from the Seahawks, y'all, who really anchors down the run game, as an inline guy. He gives you the ability to move JSN around the way. Because let's face it, JSN isn't a game-changing blocker like Puka is or like Cooper Kupp is. But because you have such a great inline tight end, you can really get creative with how you move all these guys around to the point where even though he's in a slot, he runs, a decent amount of slot in a run heavy scheme, he's not asked to do all that really insanely physical work that some of these other power slot type guys do, right? I think that, if it was up to me, like, would I want my JSN? Would I want my Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp? Yeah. But at the same time, man, if you're not elite at running the football, can you even really fully take advantage of that player if your quarterback isn't an elite player? You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that's the issue. That's why when I look at this team, I think that for me, I would rather us get a guy that is really can anchor the offense, as an inline tight end, as a true blocking threat, because when you look at this team, it's like when you look at the NFL now, you look at these slot guys, these power slots from Brock Bowers to Puka to I'll throw George Kittle in there, to Travis Kelce. There's such a vast range of body types of profiles of players that can make sense. But there is only, an inline tight end is an inline tight end. I almost want to say you can find guys, like you're saying, throughout the draft, that can be weapons and mismatch type players in the middle of the field. But it seems like, to find a real anchor is hard, and I think that for where we are, I think we have guys that can be mismatches already. We have Noel, we have, Higgins, we have, hell, you could use Nico like that. Whatever. You have Hutchinson. I think that all these guys can unlock themselves, if from that spot if we can run the football, Now, I think Sadiq, if he hits his potential, this astronomical the amount of numbers he could put up because he can run away from everyone, But it's just like, man, it's just such a fascinating, topic, But I do think, man, like you're saying, I like Delp's fit. I think it's a cleaner fit if you go get a Delp, if you go get a guy like the tight end from Stanford we were talking about, I think the same idea that you had with the offensive line, I think you kind of have to have that with the tight end room as well. Because, one more thing I'll finish off. We kind of have tried this before, with this Brevin Jordan, this I'm trying to think what other Kay Stover, I know he wasn't necessarily a move like threat in terms of like him being like a super powerful, receiving option down the field and all that. But he was a move type guy, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, man. It's just
And one thing I'd add, the last thing I would say is I think if you're gonna go the weapon inside in this class, and you kind of look at it, like there's a lot of great tight ends, but man, there's so many interesting receiving weapons that have that upside as a blocker that perform. Like if you could go get a Denzel Boston and like the second pick in the second round, if you wanted to go that way, a guy who's really good at block as a blocker, like Omar Cooper's got that perfect amount of screw you to his game, where he has that little bit of Jarvis Landry with the backpack with the jetpack kind of vibe going on. Like go across if you want to go grab Chris Bell, who's an absolute freak at like 230 and just runs and runs and runs. Like Malachi Fields, like you go down Elijah Surratt, physical dude at receiver. Like Jeremy Bedard is willing to do that shit. Like just going down, it's like there's so many of these dudes in this class. It's more than I've remembered in a while. Where you got so many of these quote unquote X guys that people say they want to lump these guys in as X's, but in reality, the second that a guy is legitimately in these X conversations and you're starting to compare him to Mike Thomas's, or are they fast enough kind of question, but they're in that 4.5 range, but they're not really that 4.4, so you're not like excited about them going super high, but they have really good 3-cone numbers and all the things you look at like agility, but not great vert and size and physicality and catch point and the willingness and the right attitude. That might be where you can kind of get that thing. It's what they did previously with Hutchinson, right? This is why he's still on the team and executing like he did, and I think that's the kind of player that you could grab that could be fascinating. I 100% agree. You got to come out of this class. And last time I said this, I joke about this with DTs, and we'll probably talk about that briefly, and because I know someone asked about like what we would do at 28, but like the second we talk about how good of a class is that position means they're not going to draft one. So, tight end being so deep,
we did say that about the tackles, the Blake Fisher year, and they did
right,
take a tackle.
Right,
we had said they were going to do that, and they did it, and people were still as mad as as they were. But anyway, so Caserio will do things that are some people it's. You can't really, there's no real way to read them. So, yeah, man. So, Space Age says, who do y'all want at 28? I think that can kind of lead us back into this. Josh has been, for the past few weeks, talking about defensive line in the first round. I would be happy with that, man. It seems like there's a lot of different ways that we could go. I think that each way has its pluses and minuses. Obviously, defensive tackle is there, right? We are very undersized at DT. We have been. I think D'Amico is fine with it, but guys like Caleb Banks, it seems like there's a wide range of seems like outcomes in every mock draft. You see, oh, he's going to be a top 15 pick here. Oh, he's falling out the first round here. I think Caleb Banks is a guy that makes a lot of sense from an upside standpoint. Caden McDonald makes a lot of sense. He's a guy that can come in day one and be a one technique that can complement all the guys that Caserio and D'Amico have found not only in free agency, but also maximize their play. I mean, think about it. If you pair a guy like a Caden McDonald or like a true run-stopping, one technique guy that can still shoot upfield and one gap, how we ask our guys to do. You pair them next to guys like Tommy Togiai, like we've seen, had a great year under D'Amico's scheme. Sheldon Rankins, Malik Collins when he was here, I want to say. Guys like that Caserio has found, Tim Settle, right? I think that would be a nice way to kind of tie, the team together because it kind of fits with the profile of guys that we can already have. Caleb Banks is just a freak. He's a guy that can be that one technique in one gap, but he's a guy that could, also be your 3 technique and be like, you would damn near be running 2 nose tackles at points, probably damn near has the athleticism to play some strong side edge. But when I think about Logan Hall, who we've added, who can play inside and outside, right? You know, the other edge, Demarcus Robinson, we got. I think there's a lot of versatility and flexibility that we can have, man. So, Josh, I know I talked a lot, but when you think about taking defensive line in the first round, I know we talked about edge. I hit on the defensive tackle pretty good, but like, what are you thinking about, like, edge specifically? And I mean, you could tie it in with the defensive tackles however you want to, man.
Yeah, I think the one name that you didn't mention that I think is completely in play now with his kind of interesting measurements and interesting timing is Peter Woods. I think he's a guy who would fit really well with kind of what we're looking for and kind of that upside swing and the kind of guy that we can bring in. Like everything I've heard is there's no questions about him as like a teammate and the mentality and everything. It's just a matter of playing Wade and then that weird shit that went on in Cleveland. I was gonna call Cleveland. It's basically is Cleveland. It's a Cleveland of college football. Clemson, the last year or so, with how kind of weird it got over there. But he would be really fun as a player. But man, every time I talk about DT, and I think it's just like it's really obvious to me that it makes a lot. Whether it's Christian Mel, there's just so many names. Like, and it's a class where there's not that massive amount of depth, but there is that like top tier where if you want a guy that's can legitimately come in and take over one of the very, very few spots you have left on this roster where you could have a guy come in and really not have a ton of competition if he's that high level player to start from day one. Because in reality, like there's at this point, where else are we talking about? Like assuming that he loves Henry Toa at the other linebacker spot, and he's not going to replace that. DT's the only other thing. I think they could totally do linebacker as well and eventually replace him throughout the year if they get the right guy in the second or third round. But with how this class is, but I think looking at D line, it's like it's just so damn obvious now that they have to bring in someone in the interior or some kind of pressure player that can take some I know it sounds stupid, but take pressure off of as a pressure player. It's a lot of pressures off of the two defensive ends. And I think it's just so important. The most underrated thing that's not being talked about enough is, man, Hunter. I mentioned that is getting up there. He played 17 games. Will played 17 games. Dominique Robinson is not a long-term answer like yet. Maybe he comes in and flashes. We didn't bring Derek Barnett back yet. At DT, there's not that like difference maker. Settles out the building, a guy that provided some pressure. Autry's out the building. You got Logan Hall in. That's nice, but like in reality, you're really just one more piece you really need on that defensive line is a legitimate pressure threat. And if you don't have that, it kind of really makes me nervous because if we lose Hunter or Will for any extended period of time next year, I just don't know if like I think both of them are really special players, but it's really hard for me to believe that they can carry an entire unit with how everything on the team, like not just defense, but everything is built around the D line's performance and everything is built around those two edge rushers at this point, really, because we've got a bunch of interchangeable role players that play their asses off with how they're coached up, but it's the entire team is built on those two edge players right now, secondary included with how talented they are. So I just think there has to be that investment. And with how good the edge class is, if you don't go DT at first, that's fine. You can go offensive tackle. You could go freaking guard for all I care. You could go line, whatever the hell you want to do with that first pick. But there has to be an edge addressed, I think, in the first 2 days of this draft because of how talented it is and how much depth there is in that 1 through 45 or 50 picks kind of group of players.
So for you specifically, you would rather go edge than DT first? Like I know that's a hard question to ask, but because it's similar to what my bad.
No. I mean, it's a really good question. I'm glad you narrowed it down on me for that. It's hard for me. I think me personally, I would go DT first just because of where the value is and where everything stacks with like how talented everything is and there's not a ton of like really not a ton of day 2 DTs. There's that first round, early second kind of bubble of DTs, and there's a fucking drop off, like right off the table, right? And then there's the edge rushers where there's that first group, but then there's a second wave and a third wave and a fourth wave. and we could see 9 edges go in the first round, but then we could see another 9, 10 go in the like it's going to be insane. Like we thought about how crazy it was last year. There's not the Abdul Carter at the top, but I think the best way to do it is you go DT in the first position, first spot. You can, and then somewhere between those next 2 second round picks has to be an edge rusher or another. I mean, if you want an inside outside flexible player, go with that, right? If it's a Keldrick Falk, if it's whoever it is, right? I don't know. Like somehow Zion Young falls, he's more of an edge player, but like I think that's the kind of formula that I would personally approach. Go DT early, and then edge at one of those 2 second round picks.
I mean, it would be nice if we could. The first 3 picks were almost all trench players, where like,
Yeah.
maybe you get 1 offensive lineman, you get 1 defense or 2 defensive linemen, 1, probably an edge guy, and then 1 maybe has, flexibility, or just a pure DT type of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that each of those kind of would make sense, and it almost doesn't matter the order you do, as long as you hit on the players. I mean, for me, it would be a very not sexy draft, but if we came out with a guy that we felt really, really good as an inline tight end, and then came out with, 2 guys on the D line, one edge rusher, I mean, 1 offensive lineman or a linebacker. I think that's something we haven't talked about at all too. I mean, how crazy would it be to see us take a linebacker in the first round? I mean, what do you think about that?
Oh, I love this linebacker. This linebacker class might be the best. I keep saying, no, this is the best. No, this is the best. It's not the sexy positions, but like between tight end, between linebacker, between edge, like these are stacked classes, like depth wise. I think you can get that linebacker though, and with maybe if you move back up from the third into the second or even in the third round, you can get a guy that's a projectable player that you really see as a starter that can potentially take over, whether it's a Galladay, whether it's a Rodriguez out of Texas Tech, whether it's even if you like Lewis, the undersized kid out of Pitt, like if you like him as kind of a movement player and kind of a different cat. Like there's just so many pieces, and I mean there's lists and lists and lists. Someone that we've talked about previously, I think was mocked to us early on, was Anthony Hill, like a guy with that kind of athleticism where you can kind of really get into that Fred Warner, get D'Amico with all those feels from back in the day of using him as a move player, pressure player, kind of some different things. Maybe you see it as like it's Dante Hightower from Cusero's days in New England, where he can be that next pressure player that you can pair with Will in a kind of creative way, and they can be kind of ambiguous with the pressure. But yeah, I agree. There's just linebacker is such a good. This is probably one that you're not going to see a linebacker class like this for a few years at least coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's one of those things where you have options, and I almost want to say, as we're kind of thinking about, we're talking about the defensive line, and I know it's a very specific thing, but it's almost like that whole front 7. You could say that, you don't want to have any kind of drop off anywhere in there, because like you said, I mean, the second that, you lose I mean, if you lose Aziz, there's the drop off between him and everyone else probably is worth a pass rusher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
great point. Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot of different ways that we could go, man. When it comes down to it, I just want us to hit on the player. If we we're open-minded, I think, we're definitely an open-minded podcast. I think, if we take a receiver higher than we both feel, we'll make sense of it. I mean, but it just comes down to, their role and everybody else's role and how they're going to make it fit. Or is this guy just that good to where he could just beat out, Higgins and, Noel and just, but I think I just can't really see with the upside that Higgins has shown and with really the limited opportunities he's had, whether it be because of quarterback play and the play caller just getting a feel for a bunch of things going on the offense. I think that Higgins' stretch ran where he got like 7 touchdowns in like 5 or 6 games was insane. Okay, let's stop this right now. Got a super chat, man. You helped us reach our goal. Shout out to Space Age 713, man. I need to get some soundboard stuff going on
Absolutely.
eventually. Yeah, we got to do that, man. For next week, bro, we will have a soundboard for for our super chats, man. But yeah, so
great show, by the way. His profile picture, Jackal. If people haven't checked it out, check it out, man. It's a good show.
Okay,
I think
cool,
it's on.
cool.
It might be on Peacock, I believe.
I don't think I've even heard of it, man. But
yeah, it's like one of those spy thriller joints.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll check that out, but for sure. So we have to take a running back, fellas. We actually kind of talked about that. I think like it's a hard thing to say because I think that we probably should, right? I mean, hell, who's our RB3? I mean, Jawar Jordan. I mean,
yeah.
If Montgomery goes out, we don't have any kind of physicality in that room. And it goes back to looking like the same exact room that it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what? I mean, as we're sitting here talking about it, it's like we kind of do. I think for the kind of offense that we have to have, that we have to be successful this year, you kind of do need some Montgomery insurance, 100%. Now, how do you do that in a draft where, I mean, outside of a couple guys, well, really, to be honest, outside of one guy, right, Jeremiah Love, I mean, who is the next guy that, is worth a high second-round pick? You know what I'm saying? Josh, I mean, how do you feel about Mike Washington? I know we've talked about Jadarian Price. I mean, these are guys that listen, Mike Washington is, let's just get the elephant out the room. When it comes to guys that look like RB1 type guys, right? He looks like it. 6'1", 225, whatever, runs a 4.3. But I mean, at the same time, he never, like, with that type of elite explosiveness and all that stuff, testing numbers, he really probably should have been even a little bit better than he was throughout his time there in college in general. I mean, so how do you feel like we should approach the running back position in the draft?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a 1-tier, 2-tier thing where it's like you got your Love by himself, like lapping the field because he's probably one of the better running backs to come out. I heard a great comp. I forgot where it was, but it reminds me a little bit like has some Darren McFadden to his game coming out, like that kind of just long, explosive, lanky cats. And then you got the next two guys who both have I think the Jadarian Price thing. Like when you go back and watch his 40, it's like you could tell that dude didn't spend bunch of time working on his his form and everything because that was just a raw 4.5. And if he's running a raw 4.5, like like a 4.4 is in there pretty easy, because his form was pretty crappy. So I think if you can if you target that guy and you say, you know what, we see him, we see his ability to catch the ball. There's a clear vision where it's going to be a three-headed monster that we're really going to lean into Woody Marks in the passing game, and we talk about attacking the middle of the field and using him out of the backfield and really pushing CJ into that kind of direction. I can see that if you really value the player, and that's the beauty, and that's why you go out and sign all these guys in free agency, is how if that value slaps you in the face like it did last year with Noel, hint, like if it does it again where a running back drops there, or for some reason Mike Washington drops because he's one of those weird guys that's kind of that late bloomer a little bit, playing at Buffalo, moving down the line, didn't have that big kind of breakout year till last year at Arkansas, and it was good, but it wasn't great all the time. There's flashes of really special stuff. Is he more of a zone guy, power guy? What's the kind of look for him, and how does he project? There's not a ton of carries on his body. So if somehow he drops to that second round pick, you really start thinking about that. Like that's really hard to pass up because of the size and physicality. I think I agree, but I think what you can do too and be super creative in this class is there's a lot of guys in that third tier that are, whether it's a Jonah Coleman or whether it's Amari Taylor that's really fun. I've been watching him a little bit. But a guy that I think you have the flexibility to do and go get is a Nick Singleton. a guy who got injured the Senior Bowl, a guy who I can't quit. Like I've been trying to make that happen. He's been up there with my campaign with Caleb Banks, right? I just really love the way, and I think he gives you that receiving ability, that upside as a runner, and I think you bring him in, he's that next guy that you can kind of slowly bring along, and kind of eventually he's going to knock down that door, and he can allow you with the fact that you don't have a ton of money. Like, you have Montgomery as the guy right now, but his cost is not prohibitive in a way that you can't move off of him. After we've seen Nick move off of guys like Tunsil and Titus, like it was nothing, like he was taking off his pair of his shoes, right? Like, you can see that moving forward. You just have to be really kind of focused, because this isn't a great running back class, but you have to target it, and you have to be very like targeted in what you're looking for. You got to get that home run ability. They got to bring you size. There has to be a very narrow path, but I think that path is there, and you can kind of see how that player can fit. It's just a matter of like targeting it, because I agree. I mean, I think that's a great point. If Montgomery goes down, you're back to where you were with square one, and your O-line may be good and better, but like, is it that much better where it doesn't matter? Like, you're running Woody Marks and like and a bunch of dudes that like are bouncing between practice squad and active roster.
Yeah, I mean, another good point too that Space Age makes is Woody was banged up as well. I mean, he was banged up. It seemed like whenever he touched the ball more than a fit, I mean, I damn near want to say 10 times. Whenever he touched the ball over 10 times, he had to leave out of the game, or something was, going wrong. You know what I mean? So he's just not he runs hard, and it's not a question of is he willing to run between the tackles. I think, or it's not like he ducks contact, It's just that physically he's just not the biggest back, you know what I mean? And you take a beating playing that position. You know what I mean? So Nick Singleton, though, that's a good high upside for possibly, a mid round, or when you think about the rate of return on what that pick might end up being, you know what I mean? Like how far he actually might fall. I think that's a really, really good idea. The thing is there people that, because I mean, you're talking about a guy that in an alternate universe could have been a first round running back. You know what I mean? If his career had gone the way it looked like it was going to start out, I mean, this guy's a former 5-star running back that was, supposed to damn near be damn near on the Saquon Barkley type plane before everything just kind of derailed. You know what I mean? So the thing is like, is he actually going to fall that far? I mean, he might be a guy that you have to kind of take in the third round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit earlier than you would expect in the third round, also. So, but I agree. I do think that when you think about even that, the rate of return for a pick on Nick Singleton, if he reaches his potential, is kind of exponential, and can make you look like a genius in a few years if he, if he's able to stay healthy and, we built the line a certain way. I really would like that, man. Yeah, but thank you, Space Age, for sure. I mean, I kind of forget about how much, you just expect guys to be healthy. But again, when you kind of are going to be running the football a lot, kind of the way you view positions kind of has to change. You kind of have to take a little bit emphasis off of receivers and having like, this crazy deep receiving core. But that running back 2 and 3 becomes really, really, really important, man. One thing I want to say, Josh, while we was on it, I mean, haven't really seen anyone talk about this, and I haven't looked at this player in a long time, but what do you think about Tevin Coleman as a comp for Mike Washington Jr.?
That's that's kind of interesting. I never really kind of connected to. Yeah, that's interesting. I Coleman's interesting because he was kind of that long, tall, linear kind of one cut back. He's not a ton of. I think Washington has more wiggle, like in terms of like side jumping, hop stepping the way he's got a little bit of marking room in his game where he's able to break down and hop and then have good reestablish his contact balance. Tevin Coleman, like great hands, fast as hell. Like similar. I can see that though. Because the home run ability coming with a big back, that's fascinating. And I mean, Coleman is one of those guys that if he hadn't been with the Falcons, where it was him and Devonta Freeman, and they kind of split everything, if it in different universe, if he gets to Atlanta and Shanahan is there in Atlanta a little bit longer, like there's some interesting upside there. Even Rodney just brought up Emmett Johnson's fast, but a guy that's interesting to me as projectable dude is Adam Randall. I think he's fun because you have that receiver upside. There's not a ton. There's like minimal grind, like wear on his tires, right? Like he's a dude that I think if you really trust and you value your coaching at the running back position, you can bring him in and develop him slowly, and maybe you get him in the 4th round. I agree with Singleton. I think he's probably a 3rd round guy if you really want him. I think he got bumped down, maybe bottom of the 3rd round, maybe 4th round because of the injury, depending on how he checks out. But man, I think it's interesting. This class there's always guys in it, but you just gotta really be like stealth and precise about how you're gonna target guys. But that's interesting. I like that Coleman comp. It's kind of a fascinating kind of look at, maybe even Adam Randall's kind of that guy too, because he ran like a 4.5, but he's putting a lot of weight. He's explosive. He's big, good hands. So I'm fascinated to kind of see how all these running backs play out and how many of them are put in situations where they can really blossom.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't watched too much Adam Randall yet, but Emmett Johnson, he's kind of he's kind of a weird case to me because like before the combine and all this stuff, he was built up as being this guy that was supposed to be like a speed guy, and then he goes out there, he weighs 200, like right above 200 pounds, and then he runs a 4.56 or something like that. He didn't run a good 40 time, and I understand like I'm not a stickler for 40 times necessarily, but that's kind of worrisome when a guy isn't that big already, and then he runs that. But also, this is a guy that isn't necessarily have to be a running back one necessarily. Can he come in and be a productive football player? I think that's something that that's what really matters, because like I'm thinking about it like, well, if Emmett Johnson ends up being like Devin Singletary, then I think that's a damn good pick. But where in the draft does that come? If you could get Emmett Johnson, I guess like in the 4th round or something like that, I think that would be a damn good pickup for us. It's gonna be interesting to see how far he actually falls and where he goes. Adam Randall, I have to watch him. I actually put him up while we're talking a little bit, just check him out a little bit. But yeah, man, Josh, I mean, so we talked about linebackers. Was there any other position group you wanted to hit on?
No, I think we kind of nailed everything. I think there's just a lot of spots and a lot of depth available at different positions that we can kind of address, and it's nice because you don't always have these classes that line up with what you need. And with the way our picks kind of line up, like we would feel kind of weird if we were picking up higher and we felt like we needed to get a DT. It might not line up, but picking at 28, it's really good positional value to go get one of those. And then the way the DN class looks and the linebacker and the tight end and having all these picks in the 2nd and 3rd round and kind of all around that circle, even with us giving up that 4th for the running back Montgomery, like I think we're in a really good position to take advantage of where this draft is most bountiful in its talent.
Yeah, man, I 100% agree, man. All right, y'all. So we've been live for 100 or for an hour 20, man. Make sure you like, sub, and share if you want to support the channel, man. You can leave a super chat on here. I think even after we close the live down, you can still super chat. It costs $2.99. I think either $1.99 or $2.99 to become a member of our channel. If y'all want to help us out, man, make sure y'all do that. You know, we have more content coming for you guys. I was sick last week, so we weren't able to record any videos, but I'm feeling a little bit better now. So we will record a couple of videos for y'all this week, and they should be out this weekend, man. Make sure you guys have a great evening, man, and thank y'all for spending some time with us on this Wednesday. Remember, listen, every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we will be live, man. Peace, y'all.